Hello everyone, I'm EternalOpossum, and welcome back to the series where I rank every single chef from Hell's Kitchen. Today, we're taking a look at Season 6, which, if you don't know, is my favorite season. It's got a lot of funny moments, my personal favorite winner, and perhaps the most well-known moment in the show's history. Despite that, I think as a whole, Season 6 cast can be best described as solid. There's a fair number of chefs I like or even adore this season. Hell, 3 of them I consider in my top 10 as of this moment. So that's pretty high praise. On the other hand, I will admit that there's a number of these chefs that are kind of uninteresting. Not that I didn't find something to enjoy out of some of these chefs, but compared to others, some of them are just a bit lacking. Once more, one season at a time, some chefs I talked about before, so if I don't talk about them that much, chalk it up to that, or me not having much to say about them, jokes are not to be taken seriously, and real life stuff won't factor into their overall ranking, only their edit on the show. Now then, let's rank every chef of Season 6.
I don't know, boiled coconut, chef?
Much like Season 2, there's really no chefs this season I would say I outright despise with a burning passion, but if there's anyone who I consider somewhat close to it, it's without doubt Andy. Despite making it all the way to the final 8 and being the most successful out of everyone here, Andy's easily one of the weaker chefs on the blue team this season. He also doesn't really stand out too much until around the final 11, where he does a pretty scummy thing and suggests to nominate Robert while he's still in the hospital in order to avoid nomination, and then he survives over Jim despite him saying that Ramsay made him nervous. After that, he gets into a rivalry with Robert that sees neither person really come out as that likable, which ends when Robert gets eliminated the same episode. And then in the final 8, he loses his fingertips to what my old culinary instructor called the finger ear, which I initially felt bad about, until you realize that he's having Dave do the majority of his work while not delivering himself, and gets eliminated. Yet Andy's edit shows him as someone who downplays a lot of his numerous mistakes, gets into a feud with Robert, and yet throughout all of this, he's unbearably boring. And this usually wouldn't be a problem if he were just some other guy, but I feel this edit is meant to show him as a villain of sorts. As such, I think that compared to a lot of villains, Andy's easily one of the worst because 1, he doesn't have a chance in hell at winning, and 2, he's about as interesting as taxes. And yes, I know this isn't like him in real life, and I see that he's heavily involved in charity, so I have no doubt that he's a great guy in real life. Still, I'm not a big fan of how he was on the show.
He can kiss my fucking ass!
Louis is someone I don't really have much to say about, which is a given considering how he lasted 30-ish minutes in the show itself. Anderson seems to be one of those overconfident chefs who clearly don't have skills, so you don't expect them to be around for long, but then he adds a new layer of scum by deciding to speedrun sexism and make not 1, but 2 woman clean barrel jabs. Man, is it any more obvious this guy is not lasting very long? I'll give the show credit, it's surprising to see him get ejected the first service, although it's after the show just released the whole look line that was done literally less than 10 minutes ago. I should also address the theory that Louis was a plant in order to bring back Robert, and I personally don't know. I want to assume that he's a plant, but to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't consider him F tier because he's not long for the competition and he doesn't last the whole episode, so there's really no point in hanging him with a burning passion, but he's just Louis in the end, pretty obvious first boot.
And from Sabrina, nothing.
Sabrina is much like Andy in that she's not exactly likable, but for the most part, I just find her more uninteresting than anything else. For the first half of the season, the only thing she really stood out for was manifesting Dave and Kevin getting hurt, and getting best of the worst in the 4th episode. She's also not particularly good in the kitchen, and seems to believe herself as way better than she actually is, but considering the others on the team, she's done entirely wrong. She does get admittedly more annoying as the season progresses, especially when it comes to Suzanne and the red team as a whole, with one example seeing her decide to be petty and not tell her team that they were using venison instead of lamb. That also happens to be her last episode, as she's eliminated before the Black Jackets and gets a whole ass best of compilation as she's doing her exit speech. And yet throughout all this, I still didn't care that much about her. Sabrina's just very uninteresting. Better than Annie because I don't think she overstays her welcome at all, but that's not really saying much.
This is my station and I know what I'm doing, so back off.
Tech is someone that I feel is the perfect midpoint where my thoughts on the chefs gradually start to get more positive. Fun fact, Tech was actually the first Hell's Kitchen contestant I ever heard of. I'm seriously not kidding. Out of everyone that is well known, from Michael Ray to Christina Wilson to even this bitch, you think it'd be one of those, but nope, it's Tech, which is the perfect way to describe her. She starts out seemingly having some potential of a strong signature dish, but then the first service rolls around and you realize she doesn't have a chance in hell. It's kitchen. She's only barely above lovely in terms of terrible, and then once she's gone, Tech's left as the weakest on the team. I'll give credit that her final service is kinda memorable, where she misuses a grill. In fact, it's so memorable that she makes a cameo after she's been eliminated. Yeah, Tech is just Tech.
Look! Look! What the fuck is this?
Melinda's someone I don't have a lot to say about, and much like Louis, it's because she didn't last very long. Granted, she lasted about 15-ish minutes longer than him, so good on you, Melinda. She comes to Hell's Kitchen seemingly as one of those Gordon Ramsay sibs, but quickly becomes clear she's not gonna be long as her signature dish flopped, and during dinner service, she wasted a bunch of capellini in order to show off her owl impression. Yeah, that's it for Melinda. When she's not filming in the final piece of the spaghetti cycle of Josh and Jen, she's just Melinda. Memorable early boot for her mistakes, but that's it really.
Lovely.
Yes, sir.
It's not. It's shit.
If there was any word to describe lovely for me, it wouldn't be lovely, it would be meh. Lovely is someone I just feel very neutral on overall as a whole. Not that she doesn't have some fun sides to her, like her first service where she decides to speed run the dessert station to have a PTO or pasta timeout is pretty fun, and it's a miracle she didn't get nominated that night. And then her final plea where she claims she moves so fast that Ramsay can't see her. It's pretty funny. Not as funny as someone else's coming up, but still pretty good. But yeah, overall, I just don't really find much interest in Lovely.
Last season almost fucking died for this fucking shit.
Okay, this is gonna be interesting. For the first time in this series, we're talking about a returning chef. Returning chefs have a very mixed track record in Hell's Kitchen, mainly because a lot of times their second run can differ wildly from their first. There's definitely chefs who are better on their second time around, and more often than not, those chefs are pretty highly respected among the community. On the other hand, there's chefs who obviously take tumbles compared to their previous runs, and I think one of the best examples of this is Robert's second run. Back in my season 5 ranking, I ranked Robert at number 3 because I thought the guy was super entertaining and a true jack of all trades when it came to moments. Hell, I even went as far as to say his elimination was downright tragic, even more than G's. Mainly because Robert, even if he wasn't going to beat Danny or Paula, had reasonably more of a chance than someone like Ben or Andrea. Robert's return run is a very mixed bag for me. On the positive side, he still makes some pretty good confessionals, like when he says he takes 700 calorie bites, and I think his interactions with Van is one of the highlights of his run, mainly because they bounce off each other so well. Unfortunately, you can tell he's not coming back at 100%, and as such, it makes some of his moments kind of depressing to watch. It's like trying to get enjoyment out of a toy that's been broken. You have the memories of it, but you can't look at it without being reminded of what happened. And it's why I think Robert returning so soon after his departure was a big mistake. And speaking of big mistakes, what the fuck was with the bike punishment? Like, I maybe understand why the producers didn't ditch it if only bringing in Kevin and Dave. Like, maybe they wanted to get their money's worth. But I imagine that they knew Robert was coming back. Someone who, 1 season ago, was diagnosed with a heart condition that was serious enough to force him out of the competition. So, you think that now they take the loss and not risk someone dying on their show. But nope, they just don't. I should also talk about Robert's elimination and his conflict with Andy, and while I don't think he's wrong about Andy being weak, yeah, he was definitely harsh about it. Also, I don't think Robert was robbed. Really, the only other person who could go home that night was Van, as I don't think Andy messed up anything that service. And really, the only reason Andy got called up was so he and Robert could have an argument in front of Ramsay. Also, he was an asshole in the finals, so there's more points against him. But yeah, Robert's run, while I don't think it's as awful as people say it is, I still think it's much weaker than his first. Still do love him though, and I'm happy he's much healthier nowadays.
1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila, 4. Give me a lot more.
Amanda's not someone I have much to say about, honestly. She immediately characterizes herself as a massive ditch, starting out with serving French toast to Ramsay while having the honorable goal of doing shots with him, and throughout her time in the competition, she just has some pretty hit or miss performances. She's also one of the most relatable chefs to me because, like her, I also struggle with math. Maybe not as much as she does here, I at least know my multiplication tables. Overall, she's nice and has some pretty funny moments, but that's about it.
I love to cook. I love to make things taste really good.
I'm gonna be honest, I think Tony's a super underrated early boot, but not for the reasons you expect. He did start out okay with a good signature dish, and he didn't really mess up on his first night. However, the moment he says he hopes he's not the next elimination, you can tell he's not gonna last much longer. To be fair, his second service, which gets him eliminated, is pretty damn funny. Not only because he makes such mistakes as saying he always seasons scallops, but he didn't season it though, and his absolutely fantastic elimination plea, but he also just has a lot of great confessionals. He's much like Seth in that I think how ridiculous he can be in service is really funny, and I think the funniest part about him is that pretty much everyone forgot about him because Joseph declared he was not no bitch. Overall, Tony's a super underrated early boot because I just think he's funny.
I just want to blossom from here, and I know I will be successful. I know it in my heart.
I'm sorry, I know there's definitely some people who would put Ariel up higher, especially considering what she would later go on to do, but season 6 wise, well, here's the thing. Ariel is someone that I actually found myself drawing a lot of similarities to Paula in a way. They're both the strongest chefs on the red team, more often not the sanest chef there, and almost never get involved in drama. Unfortunately, much like Paula, I really don't think Ariel is that interesting. Don't get me wrong, she does start to get a bit more interesting once entering the Black Jackets, mainly because she's probably the most normal person there and she gets a bit more screen time, but even then, she's still the least interesting of what I consider one of the best Black Jacket lineups. Hell, she doesn't even have the benefit of being part of a really good Final 2 unlike Paula, and the most she does before the Black Jackets is look to the right. I do need to mention that I do like Ariel, however. I mean, her second run speaks for itself, but still, her first run, not exactly gonna set the world on fire.
I ain't no fucking bitch, Chef. I don't give a fuck. I ain't no bitch.
I know a lot of people wouldn't put Joseph this high, but just hear me out. For the first few episodes, Joseph doesn't start too badly. Outside of his obvious temper and overly snarky demeanor, he seemed competent in the kitchen, so maybe there's a chance for him. And then, we all know what happened, and this is why Joseph is up this high. His infamous elimination where he declares that he's not no bitch, which if you really think about it, isn't that a double negative? He's essentially calling himself a bitch. This is the elimination. No, this is the most famous moment in Hell's Kitchen, where even people who have never even watched the show before have at least heard about this one. It's such an iconic moment, and I feel is what pushes Joseph so far up for me. He's not long for Hell's Kitchen, and let's face it, he's not likable by any means, but his elimination and just how memorable it is what shoots him so far up for me.
Get all fucked up like that, it's cool, because I sit back because I know I can bail him out, so it makes me look like a hero.
Kevin's always been someone I've always had a hard time talking about, which is surprising considering how well he's liked by the fandom, and the fact he's a part of what may be considered the most iconic Final 2 in him and Dave. I think it's because for the most part I just find him pretty chill. Sure, he's pretty smug about his skills, and I mean, he made the finals, so he's got a reason to be kinda cocky. And he shouldn't have somewhat of a manipulative streak making himself look good at the expense of others, but for the most part I just thought he was fine. I will also admit that sometimes I forget that Kevin was also injured in this season, although that's mainly because Kevin's ankle injury gets nowhere near as much attention as Dave's injury. He doesn't even get a cool nickname. Well, you know what? I'm gonna fix that. Dave's called the One-Armed Bandit, I'm gonna dub Kevin the No-Leg Deputy. What a showdown for the ages. One other thing I found odd is that when he messes up, which is rare, Gordon really lays into him. Seriously, like he full on goes on a tirade that'll make Arlie Emery say that's a bit excessive. My best guess as to why this is because Kevin was so consistent throughout the season, to the extent I can understand why some people would say Kevin was robbed of winning, that when he messes up, it's much more of a big deal because Ramsay doesn't expect him to. But overall, I like Kevin. I don't love him as much as others do, but I can safely say I do enjoy him.
It was a kitchen apocalypse, like a hand grenade went off in a cow's ass.
Jim is really funny, and that's really the most I can say about him. It's not that I dislike him, it's just I don't have much to say about him. Once again, I do think he's really funny. Like, he has some of the best quotes of the season, and is the main reason why he's up this far on the list. I still lose my shit every time he talks about how the red team's meat station looked, and how he says that baby food tastes good in such an unnecessarily weird way. Really, the only other thing that's worth talking about is his elimination, which I definitely feel is very weird. He didn't seem to be that bad in the kitchen, to be honest, and I think this is the best time to mention that yes, I am aware of his flaws in the show and how he was eliminated for not wanting to start a feud with Robert. And I'm kind of guessing that's how Andy made it as far as he did. Although, considering Robert was in the hospital, I really wonder how that will have panned out in the long run. Also, this is just a weird question, but did anyone manage to confuse Jim and Andy for each other? I'm ashamed to admit that I've done it a fair number of times. Anyway, I like Jim. I don't love him because outside of his funny confessionals, he's not the most interesting, but he's good.
Chef, can I get a play-by-play on that?
Did you know that Watch Mojo did a top 10 worst Hell's Kitchen chefs video? The reason I bring this up is because 1, they decided to not put several chefs who are way more deserving of being on that list, and 2, they decided to put Suzanne on the list. Which I think is pretty ridiculous in my opinion, speaks to how little Watch Mojo really makes sense. Suzanne is someone that's introduced as sort of the villain of the season, but I say villain in quotations because, to be honest, I found myself agreeing with a lot of what she was saying despite coming off as pretty snobbish and lacking in social skills. Not many others did, especially around the final 9 where she was nominated for the first time and realized that she was really disliked by her team, especially Tennille. And I think this is where I should talk about their rivalry, considering it was a pretty major part of the season, and well, I think they both have points. I wouldn't say Suzanne is wrong about Tennille's struggles early on, nor would I say Tennille's wrong about Suzanne coming off as snobbish. Anyway, after about half the season being right about a lot of things, but also being somewhat snobbish, she starts trying to be nicer, and I think this is where Suzanne doesn't get enough credit in my opinion. Like I mentioned with Andrew back when I did my Season 1 ranking, it's rare that someone sees their flaws and tries to work on them, and Suzanne is another example of this. No one else really takes it seriously though, and she ends up getting nominated quite a few times despite not really doing a lot wrong. As such, I think the latter half of her run is better because she comes off as more likable, and hell, she even admits her faults by the end of her run. That's again a rarity for many chefs, and Suzanne is among them. As such, it puts her pretty damn high in my opinion. Not enough to crack top 3 or even S tier for that matter, but she's still pretty damn close.
There's a language barrier there.
What do you mean there's a language barrier? He's speaking English, you dick.
I know, but he's from Texas.
Dude, I'm so happy I get to talk about Van because Van is, for a lack of a better term, fantastic. Yeah, I'll punish myself later. Van, in my opinion, is the poster child for looks being deceiving. At first glance, he's seen as a meathead with a hair-trigger temper mixed with a goofy personality, but make no mistake, this man can cook. He does start out kinda bad, with the edit being focused more on his angry side than his fun side, although we do get his iconic showdown with JP. But once that goofy side comes out, oh man, it's beautiful. He's honestly one of the funniest contestants in the season. The dude just has so many funny lines throughout the season, like him shouting confessionals about hating losing, and him calling JP whistle britches. He's just amazing. Or Van-mazing. I need to stop. He does unfortunately go out in 6th place after having another poor performance on Fish, but at the end of the day, what we got is without a doubt one of the most entertaining and fun chefs to ever step foot in Hell's Kitchen.
What's my name?
Tennille!
Well, this is a first. For the first time in this ranking series, I had to struggle on who was going to be number 1 on the list. I'm not kidding. You'd think it'd be another season like, I don't know, season 7, since I'm not the most familiar with it, but no, it's season 6, my favorite season. That's kinda wild to me. But anyway, now we get to talk about Tennille. Tennille starts out as having clear promise, but they're one of the weaker chefs on the red team. Not necessarily as weak as someone like Melinda or Lovely, but they're fairly close. Things however begin to change after Tennille finally snaps at Gore and fights their way back onto their station. And from then on, Tennille emerges as one of the stronger chefs on the red team, and it's no surprise that they managed to earn a black jacket. Add on to the fact that they have clear leadership abilities, and who knows, maybe they have a shot. Okay, realistically they don't, like, they're not being Dave or Kevin, but it would have been nice to imagine, as after they struggle on the fish station in the final 4 when no one else has a bad night, they're eliminated in a pretty sad way. The best way I can describe Tennille is inverse Jen. They're both passionate with clear leadership skills, and both struggle with their attitude towards Ramsay, but unlike Jen, whose attitude with Ramsay got worse as the season progressed and their work ethic suffered as well, Tennille managed to work on their attitude in the kitchen and got better, and we love a good redemption arc here. Also, about Tennille's confessionals, I'm aware that there's people who got annoyed by how much they yell in their confessionals, but personally, I think it's hilarious. A lot of what Tennille says is just inherently funny to me, and yeah, you can argue that shouting it doesn't make it funnier, but I grew up on deep fried memes, so loud equals funny. I adore Tennille so much. They're unironically one of my all-time favorite Hell's Kitchen contestants, and I go as far as to say they're my top 5 as of this moment. But of course, they're not number 1, because that honor goes to...
I feel good. I feel strong. Please don't take me out of this. Unless you think I'm not a good enough chef, then take me out. But not because of my wrist.
Yeah, as if there were any doubt. Try as Tennille might, even they couldn't match up to the sheer badassery that Dave has. The funny thing is that as much as I gush about Dave, I never really went over his journey in depth on the show. So, here we go. Dave starts out as a fan of Chef Ramsay, who, despite their lack of strong shows and challenges, do relatively well on the line, so maybe there's a chance for him. Things change, however, one fateful punishment where he injures his wrist and, in spite of the pain, pushes through it for a chance to win. This results in him being given the nickname of the One-Armed Bandit, a nickname that pretty much sums up his time on the show. Despite his injury flaring up every so often, he still pushes through, delivering banger performance after banger performance, and ultimately all pays off at the end as he would go on to win. Dave's someone that really earns his flowers just from the sheer badassery he displays in the kitchen, and there's a reason why he's one of the most recognizable Hell's Kitchen winners. I mean, if you heard of a chef who won after breaking their arm, it'd be super easy to get invested in them. There's not even much wrong I would say with Dave. He's generally a nice chef. Except for when he had this massive hate board towards Tennille throughout the Black Jacket portion, and I'll admit this is where the number 1 spot kind of shook a bit. It's definitely not the best moment for him, but I guess it's all fine since it looked like they did make up by the end. Aside from that, Dave is not only my favorite chef of season 6, not only my favorite winner, but so far, my favorite chef in Hell's Kitchen, period. Will that change? Probably not, but hey, others may try. And that's that. Season 6's cast is officially in the books. Season 6's cast is admittedly not the best, but I don't think it's bad by any means. I just think it's solid. It's got no one I really dislike by any means, and the top 3 are some of my all-time favorites. So that's pretty good, I must say. With that out of the way, let's get down to the final grades for the cast. Well, there we go. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. EternalOpossum out.